If you've got 40 walk-ons and 40 three-star and below recruits, you put them all together and competing against each other, you're likely going to see some of these walk-ons that end up better than some of these three-star guys. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode on the College Underdogs YouTube channel. I am your host, Trey Smith, and today we're going to get into this new scholarship roster capping rule that's changing in college football. I've got some strong personal opinions about it, but I also want to try to look at it objectively and how it will specifically, first off, who it will impact, and then how could it benefit the group of five, and then obviously how could it hurt the group of five as a whole. And if you don't know even what I'm talking about yet, I'll tell you in just a second. But before I get into it, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, comment at the end, share it with a friend if you're a fan of group of five football. And I know, guys, I use that term just to signify what this channel talks about, because everyone knows when you hear group of five or G5, maybe G6 soon, you know who I'm referring to. It's the college underdogs, right? It's the underdog conferences of college football. Because I know some people, they're particular about that word or about that phrase. And for me, it is what it is. It's a way of explaining and clearly communicating what this channel covers. Now, that doesn't mean we won't ever talk about, particularly in season or when the playoff rolls around, other underdogs that might be in a quote unquote power conference, because just because a team is in a power conference does not make them a favorite or doesn't mean they're not an underdog. But the focus is on the conferences that, in my opinion, don't get as much attention. And anyways, if you're new here and you're watching this video for the first time, this is a credentialed platform by the American Athletic and the Mountain West conferences, as well as Conference USA, even though I haven't really worked a lot of their media day type stuff, but try to hit them all, Sun Belt and MAC as well. But that's all I'll say on that. Let's get into the scholarship changes and the roster capping of what's recently happened. I'm going to paraphrase in a nutshell what's going on and then open up this discussion. So essentially, it was passed as a part of this. Is it the House versus the NCAA? Hold on, I just had it pulled up here. Yeah, the House versus the NCAA case settlement agreement. A lot of it was about NIL and revenue and this and that and the other. Honestly, a lot of that stuff for me, I'm just not as interested in it. I'll talk about it when I have to talk about it. But the part that really caught my attention was the scholarship. So essentially the scholarship limit increased, but the roster limit decreased, depending on who you are. Essentially what this increase in scholarships and roster cap is going to do is eliminate walk-ons, essentially. I guess you could technically still have walk-ons, but it wouldn't make a lot of sense. And the reason why is because now, instead of having, was it 85? Yeah. Instead of having 85 scholarship players and then however many walk-ons you could get. So say you had 85 scholarship players and 45 to 50 walk-ons, and you've got a roster of almost 120 to 130 players. And then now you've got these 40, 45 walk-ons competing with potentially 40 to 45 2- and 3-star recruits, where, you know, the ceiling could be very comparable with both of those groups. And then all of a sudden you have walk-ons that can begin to earn scholarships, become, you know, in best case scenarios, difference makers and NFL draft picks. We've got the Burlsworth Trophy that's awarded to the college football's top former walk-on player. And we're eliminating that because now they're putting the scholarship limit at 105 and they're capping rosters at 105. So if you have a program that can go find 105 players to give a full scholarship to, go for it. If you want to divvy up, partial scholarships, that's where I'm still trying to wrap my brain around some of this, because essentially teams have autonomy on how they want to divvy up those scholarships. Because I'm looking at an article on The Athletic, and I'll put the link down in the comments. And here's what it says. It says the 105 cap, so the 105 roster cap, will impact programs differently across competitive tiers. A few schools may recruit both transfer and high school prospects with the intent of offering all 105 scholarships to the most talented players. But several developmental programs with harbor-rich walk-on traditions in which a few lightly recruited players each year earn scholarships for their contributions. Those programs often carry 120 or more players on their roster. When preparing to trim the total to 105 for the 25-26 season, which is next season, schools will need to decide whether to recruit rosters composed of full scholarship players or offer partial scholarships to continue to invest in players who formerly were considered walk-ons. Meanwhile, they'll need to usher several players off the roster to get under the limit. And that's, to me, if you've got 105, I don't understand why you would do partial scholarships. Now, if they said, okay, you can have 105 and then 100 and, but your roster limit is 115, I guess it makes sense then if you wanted to entice quote unquote walk-on players with partial scholarships, or if it's a situation where this kid ain't good enough, so we're not going to give him a full scholarship until he earns it. Maybe that's what it is. It's opposed to roster management. It's motivating an individual to reach their potential before getting that scholarship. So scholarships don't just become a, watered down thing, even though that's kind of the risk you run with this particular rule. Kirk Ferentz, head coach at Iowa, says every school is going to have a different perspective. The unknown will be difficult. Northwestern's coach, David Brom, said, here's my thing just on a personal level. To me, it eliminates one of the fascinating, integral parts of college football, which is the walk-on, the underdogs. I feel like what's happening in college athletics is we're slowly but surely, one decision at a time, eliminating what makes college athletics great, which is the underdogs. Underdog teams, underdog conferences, underdog players. And there's nothing like a story, whether you love or hate Baker Mayfield, when you see that dude getting up there to win the Heisman, knowing that he started his collegiate career as a walk-on, couldn't even get a scholarship offer, was a walk-on at Texas Tech. Kingsbury went with Mahomes over him, which I don't fault him for that necessarily. Mayfield transfers to OU, earns a scholarship, goes to, I think, back-to-back college playoffs, and then wins the Heisman. That's an incredible story. And there's tons of others. And honestly, some of my favorite videos that teams will post is when coaches surprise the players with the scholarship that they've earned. A former walk-on with the scholarship that they've earned. So just on a personal level, that bothers me that now we have another situation here that's eliminating something that I believe makes college athletics great. All spring, which we've already talked about on this channel, we had very influential media voices lobbying against the underdogs having access to the CFP. Now we're essentially doing away with the underdog stories from a player's perspective. So my first question is this that I have to think through and answer. And I'm going to give you my thoughts, but I want to know yours in the comments. Who is impacted by this decision the most? The decision to cap rosters at 105, but also increase scholarships to that level, doing away with walk-on programs. Who's impacted by that the most? negatively? I'm sorry. Who's negatively impacted by that the most? And in my opinion, it's not the group of five, which is what I think most people's answer will be. And it might be. So if that's who it is, leave the comment in the comments why. If your thought is no, it definitely is the group of five. My thought is it's those mid to lower tier Big Ten SEC teams that rely on a strong walk-on program to compete. Because face it, once you get out of the top, 10, 15 teams, there's only so many more 4-stars to go around. All the 5-stars pretty much go to the same schools every year with a few, outsiders here and there. And then you've got these 4-stars that there's only so many that can go to only so many of these schools. And then now you're left with 3 stars and below. In more teams in the Big Ten, in the Big 12, and in the SEC, more teams than not rely on building their roster with 3-star and below recruits, not including the transfer portal. I'm talking about high school recruiting. And if you really take a walk-on compared to a 3-star and below recruit, like I said earlier in this video, if you've got 40 walk-ons and, 40 3-star and below recruits, you put them all together and competing against each other, you're likely going to see some of these walk-ons that end up better than some of these 3-star guys. Well, now the ones that would rise to the top in that scenario, they're no longer in that group unless you want to give them a full scholarship. But even then, you're going to lose probably 20 to 25 of them, depending on how much your program relies on a walk-on program, on walk-ons, I should say. So to me, it's the teams that are in that mid to lower tier of those power conferences that rely on a strong group of walk-ons to compete. Where I think the group of five will be hurt by this. I also have a thought that I think it could help them. I think it could help the group of 5 teams because now kids who could probably have a chance to compete early on at a smaller program, but choose to be a preferred walk-on at a larger program, now that net opens up. So if I'm a group of 5 team, this kid that could come help my program now as a scholarship player, I'm losing that kid to being a preferred walk-on at, let's say, Wisconsin or Illinois, 2 programs that traditionally have strong walk-on programs. Now I got a chance to get that kid. However, where I think it hurts the group of 5 is what Ryan Silverfield said at AAC Media Days, and I'm going to read your quote. I'm going to read his quote directly. When he said, "I think any coach that tells you they're in favor of roster limits is full of it. I've not talked to a single head coach in the country that's in favor. If you're talking maybe 40 walk-ons at some places, they're paying full tuition, staying in the dorms. You know how many admissions departments as male enrollment is down in college they can do with what we're able to do? We're bringing 40 full-paying young men at a university. That's a tremendous asset. They won't make up that money in lost meals." Coach Dilfer said, roster limits will impact high school recruiting and development through the continuation of the trend of coaches first seeking veteran players through the transfer portal. Yeah, we know that. Roster limits will cause many walk-on candidates at the SEC and other major conference schools to seek opportunities at lower-level institutions. That's what I'm saying. But that doesn't mean they'd be scholarship players there either. So here's the balance. That's what I was trying to get to. The balance to the positive I just communicated that Coach Dilfer says. is that he said every once in a while there are walk-ons that are difference-making players at our level. Every once in a while there are power 5 walk-ons that are difference-making players at our level, but your typical guy who goes to Georgia to be the 7th quarterback, we're recruiting better than that. In other words, we can go get a guy that's already better than that guy anyway, so it doesn't really help us in that case. He said, Coach Dilfer says he thinks this hurts them more than helps them because they fight hard tooth and nail for that 78th through 85th guy at an SEC school. Now there's no chance they're not going to turn down, let's say, $35,000 to go to their dream school to be a third-string guy instead of coming to UAB or Memphis to be a difference maker, which is fair and true. I think my perspective on this is that the gap that separates your walk-ons from some of those 3-star and below recruits that go to Power, 4 programs, I think once you put them all in the same locker room, in the same pads, on the same field, it's not as big of a separation as you might think if you're just looking on paper at stars and scholarships. And that's why I think we have seen so many walk-on players not just develop into scholarship players, but develop into difference-making scholarship players at a high level. From my vantage point, group of 5 teams now are going to have an opportunity to go get that kid now and get to benefit from the potential that he has, and instead of the Power 5 program or Power 4 program getting it, letting it be developed there, and then we see it there. Now, what will happen is the kid will probably in most cases end up transferring, but at least you're able to get 1 or 2 good seasons out of him at the group of 5 level. But I don't know. I mean, I'm still kind of processing and wrapping my brain around who this is going to impact and how. I think a lot of what I'm sharing right now is sort of my initial thoughts and my initial reactions to this news. Do I think it's good for college football, the elimination of walk-ons? No, I don't. But if that's where we're at, now I want to think it all the way through, because there might be a silver lining in here. There might be a way it could boost group of 5 high school recruiting, because it seems like it would open your net up to more guys. And now you're likely going to see more players in the transfer portal than we already see. Because if you've got 105 scholarship players, they're not all playing. So, I don't know. But in the comments, in your opinion, if you're still watching right now, who is most negatively impacted by this? And then will the group of 5 see more of a positive impact or a negative impact? And then why? Could they see both? Could certain G5 teams see a positive impact while others see a negative impact, depending on what tier you're in at the group of 5 level? One of the things I guess I'll close out here that Silverfield did say is, right now, if I'm an early high school enrollee and I haven't committed, I'd be nervous as heck. And that gets back to something I already know. I'm if you don't know, I mean, I'm in the state of Texas where high school football is king. I got some friends that are coordinators and coaches at some of the top programs in the state. And one of them recently told me that college recruiters all spring, they weren't even looking at the high school kids. I mean, they were coming to spring practices, talking to the coaches about former players from that high school who are in the portal. So I don't know, man. It's getting crazy. It's been getting crazy. I guess we just got to enjoy the ride and try to find the positives in it. Hopefully they don't completely destroy everything that makes college football and college athletics great. But I'd love to know your thoughts. That's it for me today. Thank you for watching. Trey Smith, College Underdog.